everyone. So I'm going to talk to you about my Performance Assessment 1 for SPED 418. I entitled my assessment, Dweck and Charlotte Danielson, A Contribution to T-TESS. I focus on the idea of T-TESS in general. It stands for the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System. I talk about the 6 domains, and I'm not going to list them all right now, and there are 16 dimensions in each domain. These dimensions allow teachers to know exactly what they're going to be evaluated on when an evaluator steps into their classroom to observe them and to see how well they are progressing as teachers. These dimensions they're very, very specific. For example, Domain 1, Dimension 2 talks about planning through formal and informal assessment. So when an evaluator walks in the classroom, they are going to look for your planning and see how you are assessing your students, whether it's formally or informally by asking questions, things of that nature. So I only talk about T-TESS for just a couple paragraphs. I really want to focus on how T-TESS originated. And I started off by talking about Carol Dweck. She is the professor at Stanford University, and she coined the term growth mindset, which growth mindset is when we push our students and we want them to struggle in order for their intelligence and their brain to grow. That's the only way that they are actually going to be pushed to do something. It was very interesting for me to find out that when you do struggle and when you do have to question yourself and take a step back and reevaluate things, that you are actually growing in your intelligence and your brain is actually growing itself, hence the term growth mindset. She talks about the idea of fixed mindset and how a lot of our students are very set in their ways. They want to do the bare minimum. They don't want to do it any more than they have to. And she is trying to get educators to move towards this idea of growth mindset. I also talk about the idea of growth mindset being for teachers and not just students. As teachers, when we have to reteach a TEK or a lesson because our students are struggling, we have to struggle and adapt our teaching and our plans to help them out. So we are growing our mind as educators while they're growing their mind as students. I then talk about her contribution to T-TESS, and it's not very straightforward in T-TESS. It doesn't say growth mindset is what we're shooting for. It's something I read in between the lines about. I feel as if T-TESS is going to push educators to get that growth mindset and not to just meet the bare minimum. There's always room for improvement, and that comes into T-TESS's performance levels, where you go all the way from needs improvement to distinguished, and your goal is to become distinguished. However, most people stay around the proficient range, and they want to push themselves to get to that higher level. So they're going to have to struggle to get there, hence growth mindset. I then transition into talking about Charlotte Danielson and her framework. She created this framework because she knows what it's like to be in a teacher's shoes. She knows what it's like to be evaluated and not to be pushed to become a better educator. So she created this framework in order to help the evaluation system for teachers. Her framework includes 4 domains, and within each domain there are some components. And they're kind of just like in T-TESS with the dimensions. And I'll get to that in a second. Danielson's framework has become well known across the United States, and at least 20 states use her layout of her framework for their evaluation system, and Texas happens to be one of those. Except Texas took her ideas and created their own evaluation system, hence T-TESS. I talked about how her 4 domains were then broadened into 6 domains for T-TESS, and how her components were taken and put into dimensions. And it's more specific in T-TESS on what they're looking for and what they're wanting. I concluded my paper by saying that without Dweck's idea of growth mindset and Danielson's framework, T-TESS wouldn't be what it is today. We wouldn't have this great evaluation system that'll push teachers to become better educators. So I hope this made sense, and I hope that you learned something from it, and if you get the chance to read my paper, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.